All right, okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order in open session. Welcome to this evening's hybrid Board of Trustees meeting being held both in person and virtually. This meeting has been made accessible to members of the public on the link at the Moreland School District's website and on Diligent. Any person who requires accommodation to access the meeting has been asked to contact the superintendent's office within 24 hours of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded and may be published online at a later date. All right. And with that, we'll start with the flag salute. And it looks like we have some special guests.
Let us know when to start.
Yeah.
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Oh, don't sit down. You're just getting started. So, we have students from MMS today. So do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more?
Hi, I'm Angel. I'm in 8th grade and I'm one of the representatives for the web community.
I'm also in 8th grade and I'm also part of web.
My name is Alvin. I'm also in 8th grade and a part of web.
All right, awesome.
Tell us a little bit about web and,
Yeah.
and how you got involved and what you were hoping to achieve.
Web is basically for the 6th and 7th graders. Web stands for Where We Belong, and it is for like helping them get around campus. We do like events, like to help them.
That's awesome. Very cool. So when you talk about making people feel welcome, I'm assuming this is for the incoming 6th graders who were just a few months ago elementary school kids. They find themselves in a big building. Where do I go? Is that, yeah, awesome. What are some of the kinds of welcome activities that you guys do?
For example, in I think the week after next week, we have a hello week where we will be handing out stickers and saying hello to everybody we see, trying to help them feel welcome and appreciated at the school.
That's awesome.
Also in the beginning, near the beginning of school, we have a student orientation where we do tours and for the 6th graders and also some of the readers that are coming.
Okay.
Fabulous.
Any questions?
Well, I'm a new board member, so I'll be walking into Moreland Middle pretty soon, either back to school night or in the morning. So I look forward to you guys welcoming me out there because I feel lost out there. Thank you.
Well, it's interesting. It's the first year I don't have a kid at Moreland Middle School in some ways, and so that's always kind of neat to see. Having sent 3 students through Moreland Middle, I think it's really important. I think it's important to build culture at the school, and being welcomed is a big part of that. So it might seem kind of silly, about like welcoming those kids or whatever it might be, but it does actually, especially year over year over year, as you pass that on, you do build a culture that is important for kids. So thank you for the work.
And I'll just say, I'm probably sure you guys remember when you first entered Moreland Middle, and you probably had a web team then, 8th graders who were welcoming you. So you can recall how it felt to be someone lost or not know anyone, and then immediately find a connection with the older grades. And it's appreciated because you can kind of give back what you felt, right? And I can only imagine that this group is not just the 3 or 4 of you.
There's 63 web leaders this year. It is a big group. We needed every single one of them to
Exactly.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. And It's only eighth graders, is that right?
Only
Only eighth graders. And you guys are at the top of the food chain. You get to harbor them in, and actually, it's a great example. And I know next year, when you move on to high school, you're gonna encounter the same kind of greetings from the high school level too, and you'll be able to apply yourself that way as well. So thank you so much for volunteering, and to all of your cohorts that are also helping out, and I think this really helps develop that culture that Brian is talking about.
Right. Before you go, I see two more people in the audience in matching t-shirts. Do you want to take a moment to introduce them to the rest of the folks?
My name is Ashley Roberti, and I am one of the 7th grade math science teachers at Moreland Middle. Myself and I would say probably about 10 adults on the Moreland Middle School campus work with these amazing 8th graders. They have to apply, they have to go through like training for 2 days, everything. And we help on orientation, but really when it comes to orientation, we're hands off. It's those guys that are doing it, and we're just kind of behind the scenes. And then.
Hi, everybody. Larry Lopez, principal.
Really? When did that happen?
I know.
But you got the t-shirt.
But you got the t-shirt. It's official.
Yeah, so I'll just say I was really fortunate to be able to walk onto campus when it was 6th grade orientation. And let me tell you, I felt welcome and included. And Ashley ran right up to me. Do you want a shirt? I went from the different classrooms and the kids were like, do you want to play the game? They were playing a name game. So you know how hard that is for me. You have to remember everybody's name in the room as you passed around. And so I just felt incredibly welcome. And I know that those 6th graders did too. And for all 63 of you that were part of making your school feel welcoming and inclusive for people, it's like nervous when they are going from 5th to 6th grade. And so thank you to the teachers who were leaders in this and getting you ready. And just thank you to all of you. And please tell your friends who are part of it that we all say thank you, because it does make a difference. It's a really important program that you're a part of. So thank you.
And congratulations for doing such a good job.
Yes. And high five for you guys, 73 of you all. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you so much. All right.
Now you get to
Go and have dinner.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to report out that there was no action taken in closed session, and we want to make a change to the agenda. The amendment is that we will have closed after open. So with that amendment, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved as amended?
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Comments from the public?
Well, good evening. Members of the public may address the board on any subject of concern to you, including those not on tonight's agenda. However, provisions of the Brown Act preclude any action. As an unagendized item, no response is required or permitted from the board or district staff, and as already stated, no action can be taken. The board, however, may instruct the superintendent to follow up, which may or may not include placing the item on a future meeting's agenda. If you would like to address the board today, please complete the blue public comment card within the first 15 minutes of the board meeting being called to order in public session. On the card, please list the agenda item you would like to speak to. If your comments do not pertain to an agendized item, please write public comment. When your name is called, please come to the podium and state your name and organization that you are representing. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per the board governance manual. Do we have any public comments this evening? Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so the superintendent's report will be really short tonight because we've got a very long opening of schools report where some of my comments are in that presentation. So we were really excited that the power went out on the first day of school. That the phones were down, the power was out in some of our schools, and the internet was out everywhere. So that was fun. But our teachers and our staff pulled it together. Champs, school, first day of school honestly did go off without a hitch except for the power outage. And lots of smiley faces. We had a great start to the school year. That was like the only big bump. And so want to say thank you to the HR team who organized the breakfast burritos that were delivered out to all the sites. So that is an annual tradition here in Moreland where we serve breakfast to all of the staff on that first day of school, which is just really nice. And it also helped that the power was out and there was food. So thank you for that. Next slide. We are in back to school night season. I want to show you there, that is Nick, Mr. Gudataro over at Latimer holding up our new math curriculum that he was showing to the parents. And so we have had the pleasure of Anderson, Baker, Latimer, and Payne have all had their back to school nights. And then this week, we've got EDS, MMS, and then Country Lane will round it out next week and we'll be finished with our back to school night. So thank you to everybody that's take part in that gets us ready for that, for everyone that's visiting. It's really, really important to stay connected to what's happening in our schools. And we are very excited about the new math curriculum, which we'll hear a little bit more about later. All right, next slide. Okay, so we have our first President's Council meeting next Wednesday, and we've already had one of our MEF meetings. We've got our first President's Council, and so we also, just keep it on this slide, we are starting our school site SIPSA presentations at the next board meeting, and so we will kick off that season. So back to school nights will be over, we'll kick off SIPSA presentations, and before you know it, it'll be February, Valentine's Day. Next slide, please. And then just a quick little visual for Measure M. We are moving forward with our phase 2 project. So should the board approve tonight's contract with KYA, we are planning to break ground on the Anderson landscaping project in mid-September, followed by the groundbreaking for the new field in mid-October over at Baker. We're going to wait for their catwalk to get finished before we tear up that field. So that's all I have for this portion of the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Board member communications?
So I'll just, because you're mentioning the fields, I just wanted to acknowledge the extra effort I'm sure that it's taking to work around and be thoughtful about the catwalks and the MEF 5K and some of those activities that our schools and Ed Foundation host, and making sure that as much as is possible, we're able to continue supporting those groups. So thank you for that. I popped into Anderson and then Baker. And I just want to say back to school night is always just so fabulous. And I'm always taken back by how well teachers present not only, what parents should expect, but also themselves in their ability to help parents support the kids. And so real theme of working together to support students, which I really appreciate. Saw the magnets everywhere, the off and away.
All day.
All day. Love that. Saw big posters, saw magnets. And I heard teachers talking about it, which is really, really fabulous. I'm excited about that. And so I just appreciate their embracing and working with the district on that. So I'm looking forward to futures back to school nights.
Thank you.
As a new board member, I can say for a few more meetings, I guess.
Just one or two.
One or two, okay. I'm learning the ropes, so I want to thank Amanda and Teresa for reviewing the special ed program and the processes. It was a lot of insights for me, and thank you very much for that, and I appreciate that. So,
One update from me.
I'll just say that I think my girls were a little upset that BTS didn't actually stand for the Korean pop. When I said I was coming from the BTS. During the back to school night, I was able to go visit Baker and Latimer. And of course, again, the excitement of just the parents and their engagement with seeing what the teachers have to present. Such a great presentations and thorough all the way through each classroom that we sat in. And just starting off the school year right, they were very clear. The presentations were great. They had their slides going, and it's just really good and exciting to kind of start off a year like this. So back to school night's always a great one, and we'll be there tomorrow. I think MMS will be hitting there tomorrow.
Awesome. So I had an opportunity to go to Payne's back to school night, and Jeanette and Mariah, and I think Amanda and we walked through the various classrooms. There was, I think one of the things that struck me was, walk in and some people are just born to be teachers, I guess. So we walk into a class, and then there's this teacher who had a command over the entire classroom, and she was just like so confidently speaking to the parents about how she structures the day and everything. And then as we were walking out, Jeanette whispers to me, "This is her literally first year of teaching." And I'm like, I could not believe that. I'm like, she's been doing it for 15 years, it looked like. But I'm so glad to have such deep talent in our school district. Apart from that, again, I saw the stickers, so I think it's a good way to get that message slowly across to everybody. And it was qualitative update, like from one campus, but Jeanette said so far there've been, fingers crossed, no major issues with the cell phone policy, so knock on wood. All right, that's it. Right, we'll move on to 5A, opening schools report.
Okay, get ready. This is a marathon. So we are very excited to present the opening of this 26-27 school year report. And because it is so long, I'm going to ask, I have put a marker at the end of each section. So if we could get through that section before we answer questions, so writing questions along the way, we've chunked it so that it's appropriately spaced out.
Okay.
Because I don't want to get stuck on slide 4 and then we don't get to the other slides. So thank you for that. Next slide. Well, I always like to start by grounding us in our strategic plan, Moreland 2030, which is coming up closer than you would even believe. This is our North Star. It is our roadmap. It embodies the beliefs of the community about how we should educate children in a K-8 district right here in Moreland. Next slide. So we do believe that every single one of our students deserve an education where they're challenged, where there's supports that are personalized, where they are prepared to not just thrive academically, but that they foster connection and community at the same time. And that is the vision of the Moreland School District. And we also believe that it takes all of us working in partnership. It's not just the teachers or the principals or the support staff. It's the board, it's the families, it's our community partners, it's the staff at the district office. It's the people that are making sure our grounds and our facilities are all up and running and ready for our students to learn. And so we do believe in that mission, and we support and think about how we educate the whole child is really important part that came out in the strategic plan committee to make sure that stayed part of our mission. Next slide. So we've got 5 really important goals. All of the goals in the LCAP are aligned to this. And so that is how we hold ourselves accountable to these goals. The first 3 are really student focused, making sure that our students are academically prepared, that students are actively engaged in their communities and are globally aware, that there's a strong sense of belonging. And then we can't do it without partnering with our families and community, and we definitely can't do it without our staff and the partnership that we have with our staff. So those are our 5 goals, and everything fits sort of under those 5 goals. Next slide. No, stop. Yeah, no, sorry, I was talking to myself, Ulysses. I'm so sorry. So now I'm going to stop before we get to, go back to the slide that says, there you go. So this is the blue marker where we're going to stop and ask questions. If you have any questions, I know, we're going to stop and you have an opportunity to ask questions on anything I presented up to that point. Okay, now we can move on. So we are a very diverse community here in Moreland. We've got 7 amazing schools. We have about 3,600 students. We speak 53 different languages, our families and our students, and about a third of our students are considered English learners, and almost 15% of our students qualify for special education services. One of the things that I do want to point out is that Moreland does perform well for some of our students. We outperform the state, we outperform Santa Clara County. So we do well for some, but not all. And that's what I'm going to kind of talk about in the next several slides. Next slide, please. I thought this was an interesting slide to show. This shows our demographics over time, kind of thinking about pre-pandemic, when we came back, now post-pandemic. Our demographics in the unduplicated, it's the last row, really haven't shifted that drastically, over the period of time. But we also know that we had 1,000 students last year where we did not have their income forms. Those income forms that you fill out, we call them the first day packet. So we are working on a technology solution where it would be directly connected to Aries, it would be automated, less clunky, it would be easier for families to fill out. So Vince is leading a project in that effort. Because we think we're higher than 44.2% for our unduplicated count. I don't think we're quite at the 55%, which would unlock a significant amount of funding from the state, but we're going to double down on our effort to try to get our forms back from every family. Sometimes families don't know that their income, actually helps bring money to the district. It's not just about school lunch anymore. The other thing I want to bring your attention to, if you look at the second row where it says LTEL, so pre-pandemic, about 4.5% of our students were long-term English language learners. That means that they are in middle school and they've been enrolled in our schools for more than 6 years. So before the pandemic, we were at 4.5%. We have brought that down to 2% as of last school year. So we have cut that number in half. That's actually a bright spot, right? So we have drastically reduced the number of students who are considered long-term English language learners. They are now English proficient. And so that is a point of pride for us.
And that's not a classification percentage, but it's a result of the work that has been done to make them English proficient.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
This doesn't show up on the CASP.
Yeah.
Right. So we always look at the CAS, the Smarter Balance scores, but it's a really important data point to know that our teachers and our staff and our principals have been working really hard. And that's a significant number and it's an important data point. Another important data point is that we have grown our special education population quite a lot over the last several years. We're at about 15%. Pre-pandemic, we were around 11%. So that is an area where we're going to spend some time on this year, and I can talk about that later. Next slide, please. So we've showed this to you before. The Opportunity Myth was a study conducted by the New Teacher Project, and in that study, they studied 5 school districts. They observed 1,000 lessons. They reviewed over 5,000 student assignments. They studied and followed more than 20,000 students and surveyed them. And what they found across this study was that students show up to school and they do what they're asked, but that most of the time, students actually don't have access to grade level content and really strong instruction that lets students do most of the thinking. And so they call these 4 key levers for student achievement. If these 4 key levers are in place in our schools, these are trajectory changing levers in the lives of our students. So next slide. So what this study found was across all of these schools and all of these lessons was that approximately 530 hours of the 720 hours that students spend in school were actually not spent on class assignments that are grade appropriate. And so this is, a nationwide study, but this is really important information for us to be thinking about grounding our strategic priorities in making sure that we are providing these 4 key levers. Next slide. So we've got 4 strategic priorities this year. We want to continue on with the foundational literacy that we unveiled last year, strengthen those foundational literacy practices. We want to make sure we're focusing on high quality instructional practice, that in which students are doing most of the thinking and that they're highly engaged. We want to implement the math adoption with fidelity. That is a board directive, and so we are following along with that. And then we want to continue to focus on student belonging. The shift in this one is that we really want to be, when we're paying attention to the number of students who are in self-contained classrooms, we want to be thinking about inclusive practices and making sure that all of our students that are in our special day classes are having ample opportunities to be in the general education classroom, accessing their free and appropriate, public education, and have that access to that grade level curriculum. Next slide. So I'm going to stop there before we get into district-wide outcomes and see what kind of questions you might have.
So I don't have a question per se. I just want to go back to the data sheet and just celebrate one more time the LTELs and the work that's happened there. It's escaping me what it's called when they do that.
Reclassify students?
Reclassification.
Yes.
Thank you. That's been at the back of my mind since you said it. That is a tremendous leap. And it's so meaningful because it completely changes the trajectory those kiddos are on, not only leaving Moreland, but forever. And so I just want to celebrate. I know there's a tremendous amount of work that's done on that, and acknowledge that and express gratitude for that being a priority.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. I think the demographic shift's interesting. Having been served for a long time, we had a very, like when I came onto the board, there was a very different perspective on demographics at a macro level, at the district level, and then site by site. Those have all shifted in the 10 or 12 years I've been here meaningfully. Either schools got a lot smaller, or the demographics within those schools got smaller or changed, shifted. When do we get another demographic study that would inform us about those shifts that are happening within the district? And it feels like it's been a long time since we actually had done that.
We did have Cooperative Learning Strategies do a demographic and enrollment study for us about 5 years ago. So we were thinking about trying to dig in and get another one done. That didn't take into account any of the construction and the that's being built up around us. So it's time. It's a good question. It's time. We do track this data from year to year. That's why we have this grid here. But that study is either this year or next year is when we're going to do that.
It feels like in the macro environment of declining enrollment, in the conversations about shifting schools and the priorities in the schools, it would be time to have all that data together.
Any other questions before I move on?
You mentioned earlier about correcting or getting greater fidelity of the unduplicated. You had mentioned the 55% as a marking point. Can you explain that just a little bit more?
Yes, and Chris might have to help me. So when a school district has 55% or more of their students who qualify in that category of EL, homeless foster youth, disadvantaged, yes, so living at or near the poverty level. If we have more students, 55% of our students are in that category, it unlocks a concentration grant from the state, which brings a significant amount of resources to us. We've never qualified for that in Moreland, but we are wondering, we've been close, we've been at 50% before, like what would happen if we really doubled down to try to capture more of our families? Would we get there? We don't know, but we're going to try actually.
Because what do we think is, how much are we actually capturing? What is our estimated capture rate as it stands?
So we had 1,000 students last year that did not fill out their forms.
So only a third, there's a third of our students in essence close to that we can't confirm.
Understood.
That might shift.
That don't know to report.
No, or simply don't want to, or don't prefer to, or feel comfortable.
Yeah, so we're working on cleaning up that data and try to automate that to make it easier for families.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a fair point, because the transition from it identifying free and reduced lunches and that no longer being a component of it,
Yeah.
it kind of makes the need for the form a little more confusing. So I'm glad.
SED, sorry about this, is SED self-reported?
Some of it is, some of it is not, right? Some of it is dependent upon.
In a sense, yeah, they choose that income range when they do.
And so if you simply choose the lowest income range on that actually,
Yeah, there's some that are direct certified, but yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, direct certifieds mean we get it from the county and the state for people that qualify for state services, but yes.
interessante.
Love to know what's working on in your brain.
Well, we need 1,000 people to say they make less than 50 grand a year.
We would not do that, Brian.
No, I understand.
We would not promote that.
I understand.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to talking about our district-wide outcomes on mostly CASP and perception survey. So you go to the next slide. So this is a slide that doesn't feel so good because we just have not moved the needle at all for our students in ELA since we've come back from the pandemic. So before we left for the pandemic, 70% of our students were meeting standard in English language arts on the CASP. Since we've come back, we've been really stuck at the 62, 63, 64, 62. We just keep going. And you can see that the bands of students that are at the levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 really haven't shifted. So we're kind of stuck in ELA. And if you go to the next slide, it is the same picture for math. And while we did inch up a little bit in math this past year by 2 points, it's really, when you look at the grand scheme of things over time, we're stuck. So that is concerning, and but it's important to show, which is why I also wanted to highlight the LTEL, because it doesn't always show up in this data. So because we do have some bright spots and there is significant amount of work happening in our schools, and it doesn't always show up on this test. It's one test, it's an important test. It's how we're judged by the public, but it is important for us, and we are having those conversations as a leadership team. Next slide. So the word I can't say again, socioeconomically disadvantaged. I got it right that time, for whatever reason. These are our students broken out. This is this subgroup of students from 1819 till now and how they've done. So in math, we have kind of closed the pre-pandemic gap. We are back where we were. In ELA, we're 4 points away. Sometimes it inches up, sometimes it goes a little bit down. So we still have some work to close that gap. And we had an achievement gap before we went out for the pandemic. So we're trying to get above where we were before the pandemic. Next slide, which is our special education. And this one, you can see in math, we are stuck. We are definitely sitting at that 20%, and we have been for the last several years. And in ELA, we'll inch up, we'll inch down, we'll inch up, we'll inch down, but it's still only, it's less than a quarter of the students that qualify for special education services are meeting standard on the CAPS assessment in grades 3 through 8. Next slide. This is what the data looks like for our Hispanic students. And so we still have yet to close that pre-pandemic gap. When I look at the math, I see it inching up little bit by little bit, but it's not inching up fast enough. We want to make sure we close that gap much faster. So I think it's an interesting way to look at our data, which we haven't shown it this way before in our opening schools report, but it's nice to look historically over time what's happening. Next slide. So this is our English language learner slide. So if you still qualify for English language learner services in our school district, you are going to show up as an English language learner on the assessment, on the CASP assessment. And so this past year, 15.24% of our English language learners met standard in ELA and 23% met standard in math. We did reclassify 15% of our English language learners, which means now they're English proficient and they don't count as an English language learner. So if you see that I put a little bright blue, 22% in ELA and 27% in math, if they still were considered an English learner by the time when they took the test, our numbers would actually jump up to 22 and 27% respectively. Does that make sense? We've not showed it that way before, but I thought it was important. Our principals have been asking about that, so I wanted to make sure we made that public. I am actually going to stop here on this slide to answer any questions before we move on to the perception data.
I do have maybe more of a comment on slides 12 and 13.
SBAC slides?
Yeah, the SBAC slides. I don't think you need to go back to those. But essentially, I think this is a macro picture, right? This is a macro picture across the entire school district. And I think what would be, the timing is good in the sense that we're looking at it at a macro level. SIPSs are coming up. So I think what would be good to see a through line is how do we take this macro level? How does that translate into site-by-site actions? Because essentially the hard work really happens in the classrooms, right? So it'll be good to kind of see that to say, here's how we're responding to this in the SIPs. So I think if that's some guidance that you could give to the school site leaders as they're thinking about it.
Yes, we share this data with our site leaders at our Leadership Institute in the summer, and they know what our priorities are, and they are setting goals against those priorities. Amanda's going to talk a little bit more about the academic side of things when she gets to her section. But I think what you'll see in the school site presentations is a through line between what we're presenting tonight and what they're setting their goals around in those presentations.
And then I had a question on slide 17, which is this one, it can stay up. What triggers a reclassification?
I'm gonna put it over to you two over here, experts. I think I know, but I don't want to misspeak.
Yeah, I can speak holistically. So they take, the LPAC test, and so you have to have a certain score on the LPAC test. And then what came about last year was like a teacher survey, a teacher inventory to say, is how they're performing on the LPAC test also playing out day to day. So they have to fill out a survey, and then they communicate that with parents.
So it's a quantitative plus a qualitative assessment.
Holistically.
Would it be, I was also just on this slide here on the reclassification, I think it would also be kind of pertinent to kind of see what that reclassification looks like in those previous years in comparison. Because like, let's say for 18-19 being at 26.505, is that with or without reclassification? Because that'll change the outlook across the board.
I'm almost certain that all of the numbers except for this 25-26 are without the reclassification because they don't count as an English language learner anymore on that assessment. So
but looking at it like across the board, like what would it have looked like last year, 24-25 with reclassification? Is it really that low at 19.78, or is it actually much higher?
Like if I did what I did for 25-26 for the other years, what would it look like?
And so we can see how far off we actually are or how it's being presented.
You have to go through and find every single child who's classified. So what happens is when you reclassify them, they become English proficient. So now they're calculated in your regular English proficient scores. So their scores shift from the ELA score to just the bulk score, right, of everybody else. And so for this year, they dug through, because principals have been asking, like we've been making a lot of gains on reclassifying. So when you reclassify your highest ELs, they now fall out of this data, right? And so now you have your beginners. So you're looking at, like, we have a lot of beginners, tier 1, tier 2, that are always, entering our schools. We're welcoming them and giving them time for their English to grow. While it's growing, they're probably not going to perform as well on this test as grade level standard. If I come in as a 4th grader, not speaking English, not reading English, not writing in English, I'm not going to probably perform well on my LPAC test. And then I have this whole CASPES in front of me, which is just words upon words, I'm probably not going to be proficient. So I'm showing up in these ELA scores. Now, let's say I'm gaining in my proficiency, and maybe, a couple of years later, I'm scoring a little higher, and then pretty soon I'm totally English language proficient, and hopefully scoring higher on my CASP. My score now doesn't translate to this. Like, you might see me growing in these data points, but once I'm RFEP'd out, my growth score transfers over. So how she got that data was going through this year and looking at which kids reclassified this year. So to get that data, we'd have to go back and recapture every individual that we RFEP. But that just isn't, it kind of helps maybe understand it, of like, principals are like, we're reclassifying all these kids.
Yeah.
So it's showing that our EL scores aren't moving, but it's not capturing our highest ELs anymore because we're RFEPing them out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So just, why don't we just have the data as Brian requested, maybe instead of doing apples and oranges comparison, just have apples to apples comparison and normalize everything to, prior reclassification data. And a separate one can be starting from this year onward.
Well, that's what I was just going to say, that you read my mind. It would be really challenging to go backwards, but moving forward in time, you read my mind.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That makes sense.
So it's discouraging data. And I think we all came to with the intent of closing the achievement gap, and have seen some success in some pockets, but generally speaking, not the kind of success that I think we all hope to. And I know that we're working hard on ELA and math adoption, and hopes that kind of starts to meaningfully close the gap. We're not alone. There are other districts that are struggling similarly. What are the ideas in your mind? Like, I know you think about this all the time. If we weren't so constrained, is there something that we would be doing differently? Like, what is there a different way we should be thinking?
Well, I do think that we've been learning and learned a lot about the science of reading and reading instruction and what really works for kids and what the newest research is saying, and we're making those shifts. So that is one thing that I think we are still studying and trying to figure out what is the right balance of that. And we're still learning in that area. So there's more learning to do. But like, wave my magic wand, I don't know that we have a different set of strategies. I think we're looking at things, and you'll hear things in the SIPSA, like we're moving away from more small group instruction, and now we're starting to do more grade level novels and some whole class grade level content. So you're going to hear some shifts, but we are putting in place the research-based strategies, and all the reading that I've ever done or ever talked to and with other superintendents. This is a really hard job. Teachers have a really hard job.
And I'm just wondering.
But I still believe that we can.
For sure.
With more time.
I don't think any of us are here without that plan. But it's a different group of kiddos, right, than we were teaching 4, 5, 6 years ago. It's a different community that we're serving. And so that is kind of a little bit of a moving target, and not as easy to do, as you're saying, an apples to apples year over year, just because there's that evolution that we're kind of constantly, I think, if I'm not mistaken, trying to address too.
Yeah, I mean, everyone that's sitting up here is so dedicated to closing the achievement gap, supporting our educators, making sure we've got the right supports in place, we're managing the budget, and feels like we're doing all the right things. And so I can't think of something else that we could do. Unlimited resources. I mean, you have class sizes of 8, and you have 2 teachers, you know what I mean? Like the pie in the sky things, but normal school district, public schools. What I love about public schools is we take all kids. Charter schools don't have to take all kids. You have behavior problems, you get to say you're on a contract, you're out. You have attendance problems, you're on a contract, you're out. Private schools, same thing. So in public education, we do pride ourselves in serving all kids. It's also hard. It's hard. We've got 2 teachers in the room. I don't know what they might say about, pie in the sky, what we should do differently, what they wish they had. But with the resources that we have, the constraints under, the compliance, the regulatory, all the stuff, we're doing the right things.
On that point, Clore, I am supportive of the 4 priorities that you have come up with and the breakdown, because the demography has not only changed in the district, right? I mean, it's at the school level. So each school will be presenting something along those 4 priorities that you have laid out and work towards it. Each one will have different things to do. So we are hoping that the curves will start, getting better. Right.
Yeah, at the end of the day, our job is to support the teachers in the classrooms, to elevate their practice each year, each day. That's where the rubber hits the road. The classroom teacher is the most important resource that we have in a school district. It's the most correlated to student achievement. It's the #1 in-school factor in student achievement. Like, that's where our core instructional focus is. So when I say quality instructional practices, we're talking about tier 1 core instruction, general education teachers. Like, what does our instructional program look like? How can we support our teachers each and every day to just be better and better tomorrow than they were today? That's the goal. That's the most key lever. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to the next slide.
Did you have a question?
Oh.
Right, no.
Okay. So this is our student perception, teacher perception, family perception data. We use the Panorama survey. We've been doing that for the past 4 years. And so we ask our students in 4th and 5th grade, their sense, their perceptions of school, whether it's school rigorous expectations, how the relationships with their teachers, the strategies that they're learning, safety, and school belonging. And our elementary school students are scoring pretty well, and the perceptions are pretty high. This is a nationally normed test, so we're sort of looking at this in terms of other school districts. Still have room to grow, certainly, but we're in the 60th, 70th, and 80th percentile. We are above average nationally for student perceptions of sense of belonging. When you go to the next slide, it is a different picture for our middle school students. So we have made some gains in some areas and not enough, because you can see that our middle school students are telling us that they want more rigor, that they don't necessarily feel a real strong sense of belonging. Now, could social media be contributing to that? There's lots of factors that could be contributing to how a student feels about school. But it is important to look at across the nation, we're in the lower percentage in terms of percentile, and that does not feel good. And so that is an area I'll be working on with our middle schools. Amanda and her team are going to be working on that as well. But it is a contrast from our 4th and 5th graders. The next slide is our teachers. So our teachers are telling us about how they feel about teacher efficacy, how they feel about their school leadership, the school climate, and then how about the feedback and coaching and how it's helping or not. And so we're still in the 40th percentile around feedback and coaching, much better in the other constructs. But I want to bring your attention to the next slide, which is the demographics and additional questions, because this is what our teachers are telling us. I feel like I belong at my school site, 96%. This is 144 responses. My colleagues and I collaborate and share information effectively at my school, 95. Continuous improvement of professional learning is highly valued, 94. My school has a collaborative work culture, 94. I'm recognized for my positive contributions to my school, 88%. This tells me more about our teachers than the other constructs. It digs down a little bit deeper. And this data feels much better, than any of the other slides, but we've not shown this to you before. So I dug a little bit deeper into those individual questions to show you what this data looks like for our teachers. Next slide. So family survey. Our families, we are above the national average in terms of how they feel about school climate, school fit, family efficacy. And then just as I did with the teachers, if you go to the very next slide, we looked at those additional questions. We had 896 families who answered these questions. And you can see that we are, in the 90s or, very high marks for how families are informed about school events, how they feel that the campus is safe, that the school shares the information about their child's progress, how likely 9 out of our 10 families would recommend Moreland to a friend or a colleague. They feel like they've got opportunities to in the decision-making process, and they do believe that their school site does have a safety plan and procedures in place. And so, this is a pretty good sample size. It's, almost 900, which is more. We've had a 25% increase on the number of families that took the survey this last year than the previous year. And I thought this was interesting data to show because it's very positive. And I'm going to stop before I move on to the next session because that was a lot of slides and I want to give you an opportunity to ask questions.
Just starting, Sriram?
It doesn't. Whoever has a question, please.
So on the teachers survey, what couple of areas would you focus on to improve on the areas that were showing a little bit negative? Like, for example, the feedback and coaching. The other one is school leadership.
So Amanda has some, in her slide, she's going to talk about the principal PLC work and what we're doing around observing instruction and giving feedback and what that will look like. So I'm going to save that for her so she can talk about that in her part of the presentation, if that's okay.
Yep.
Heather?
More comments.
Yeah, I had a question on this folder.
Go for it.
Okay. So when I look at 20 and 23 or 20 and 21, they paint, like, taken in isolation, it almost seems like 2 completely different surveys, right? And I'm trying to kind of like reconcile the message here, and I'm not able to. Maybe you can help do that. Do we feel good within our schools, but I'm unable to kind of get that.
So here's how I might look at it. When you look at slide 20, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 constructs.
Mm-hmm.
We're digging into the demographic and additional questions. So we're really diving deep into those constructs. Mm-hmm. So it's the same it's the same number of teachers that took the survey. It's just I'm diving deeper into a couple of those areas.
I see.
Same thing with the families. So if you look at the family survey on 22, you'll see additional questions 95. So I dug in, what are those additional questions? You'll see them below 95%. These are what we're asking the families. So it's just a deeper dive into that construct.
Okay. Yeah, and from that perspective, I think something like if the families are telling us that they feel only 67% feel that schools are ready for learning, or that there's, what is that, readiness for learning?
Readiness for learning is a
complicated question.
It's actually like, do you feel ready to support your child in their learning?
Oh, okay.
That's what that construct is about. It's actually a very weird construct, and we get complaints about it a lot because it just is kind of a weird thing to ask families. But it's a nationally normed assessment, so we keep the questions in there to stay nationally normed.
Okay.
Is it done in both languages, like English and Spanish? Or
I don't think. Oh, wait. I'm looking at Maureen. Maureen's shaking her head. Yes. Can you tell?
For the survey, so it's, you can select your chosen language, so it will automatically translate. It's not understanding, which is important to meet the families.
Great,
Yeah.
thanks.
Okay.
One more follow-up question to that. Is there a trend between the years? Do you measure the trend, or is it just like a snapshot?
So we track this data from year to year. I actually put it in my evaluation. So all of the last 3 years survey, there's a folder in my evaluation that shows the data from the last 3 years. So we'll just continue to track it. I set goals around this, the principals set goals around this as well.
Yeah, so is it trending better or
We
worse?
are, over time,
Or yeah.
we've been getting progressively better. It's just when you look from one year to the next, it goes up 2 points, it goes down 1 point, it goes up 3 points, it
Okay,
goes down
so
2
that's a
points. But
small
over
better.
time, you can see that we've made progress since we started taking the survey.
Last question, maybe. Would it also be interesting to kind of identify the lowest, the lowest scored questions, to identify those areas as the highest need, if that was to be identified? So like those that scored very low, those questions that were very low, why was it so low? And what is it that we can do to identify or area to improve it?
That is one way to look at it, is what's the lowest score and how can we improve that score?
Right.
But I also think it's important to look at what we're asking families and what actually matters.
Right.
That's where I want to focus our efforts. So with teachers, feedback and coaching is a lower score. That's actually a really important score. How our teachers feel about the feedback that they're receiving, how often they receive the feedback. That's part of our goals. That's what we're working on. So sometimes it's the lowest, sometimes it's what's the most important kind of lever that is going to help, move school culture, school climate, student achievement. So it's not a one size fits all, just go to the lowest score and set goals around that.
But I think it's like, if we're looking for big swings of like, if we're just always around the same, up 2 points or down 2 points, but the ones that have lowest ones that we can address, that are addressable, may be able to swing that into a more positive range.
That's
What
the
I'm-
goal.
Yeah.
For sure.
So there's some really, really good feedback here, and some very positive feedback that I'm just really proud of. I would be remiss if I didn't highlight my biggest concern, which is middle school belonging.
Middle school belonging.
And that's for obvious reasons. It's hard because it's such a hard time for kids.
I know.
I have 3 kids. Middle school is hard. But we see Webb and we see all of our middle schools doing tremendous work to support kids, all kids, into that feeling of belonging. And so that is where I just can't understand this number per se, which I'm not asking for an answer. I felt like I needed to say, this is my biggest worry.
I do have a little bit of a theory.
Please.
I'm not a scientist I do think that the cell phone, the cell phones in schools, the social media, the beeps, thinking about the lack of social interaction or the diminished social interaction that our students have with each other, that they're having with their families, that contributes negatively to school belonging. And I do wonder, after we go through a year of this off and away all day and this policy, you don't see kids with their cell phones out at lunch anymore, or, in passing, they're talking with each other. Will that help this? I have a theory that it will. I don't know yet, because this is our first year of trying that.
Yeah, for sure. It makes sense because a cell phone provides a disconnect, right? You're no longer engaged in what you're in front of. And that also makes sense if you look at the elementary numbers to the middle school. That's when most kiddos get their phones, is when they're, 6, mine were much older, but it's a different time. And so that makes sense. It's just something I'm.
Yes, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a heartbreaking statistic.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
It would, I think I would, the counterpoint to that, I think is, but that's a national problem. It's not unique to Moreland.
Well, we're in the 20th percentile.
Which is why, is it worse in Moreland than in other places? Because if that's the case, and if 44%, there's a 44% of kids feel like they belong, and 44% of kids across the United States feel that they belong, we're probably doing okay. Not okay, but again, my famous doing okay. But that's for me, the troublesome part is also the last column, which is, we seem to be, and again, I'm really hoping that the school the cell phone policy makes a huge impact.
I'm not saying that's the answer,
Fair.
but I do think it contributes.
How could it not?
Yeah, it's probably a pretty huge contribution.
But that is a concerning statistic, and that is one of those ones where we do want to dive into and set goals around. And we want our middle school students to know that, not just feel, but know that they belong and that they're connected. That is goal 3 in our strategic plan. We want to foster community connection, know that they belong. So we do have some more work to do in that area.
Okay, and it says grades 6 through 12, but I assume that it's just the
6 through 8 for us.
for us, right? Okay,
All right.
okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I just have one last slide before I kick it over to Amanda. So if you go forward to the Moreland AI Task Force, next slide too, Ulysses. Claude helped me out with the graphics of this slide, so thank you, Claude. But I really do see this project, this committee task force as an opportunity for our students to really wrestle with goal 2. We've had a hard time over the last few years thinking about what fits under goal 2, how do we think about goal 2, you know, how do we move beyond climate change or homelessness, or like how do we grapple with some really tricky issues that are facing our students, our world, if you will. And so I do think that this is going to be an important task force. We've got about 1/3 of the people in the task force are families, 1/3 are our educators, and 1/3 are our students. And so I do want to thank Giselle Lanayo, who we were having a hard time figuring out how to get students here. So we're tapping into the extended day after school care. They're going to walk on over from Latimer. And so we've got, we'll have about 11 kids on the committee.
That's amazing. What a great solution.
Yeah, thank you, Giselle, because yes, thank you, Giselle. And so that gets started tomorrow.
Awesome.
Tomorrow, right here at 2 p.m. You can't just show up. I know this is a public meeting. You can't just show up. You have to be on the task force. So we've sent those invitations out, and we're really excited to get started on that work. This is really aimed at developing our set of core values, philosophy, a framework, and kind of guidelines for how we should be thinking about AI in a K-8 school district. And we want that to be a holistic and engaging conversation. And that's the purpose of this phase of the task force.
Question, is there any special ed teacher in the part of the committee?
There is a special ed teacher on the committee
Thanks.
from Moreland Middle School.
I know this has been something that's been very near and dear to your heart over the last 12 months or so, since you and I first talked about it. I'd love, again, I don't know, I would, but I want to make sure that the rest of the board agrees with me, is to get some kind of a periodic update, just here's what we're doing.
I will do that. I know that has to come from the majority of the board because it'll take me more than 15 minutes to put that together, but I would be happy to put together a summary of the different, each time we meet and put it in the Friday report, just to let you know.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be just a very high level.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Is that good?
I see head shaking.
Okay,
got it. Any other questions about this task force or anything else that I presented before we hand it over to Amanda?
How are you doing in I know you have a lot of interest in serving and you're having to go through applications.
We had 60 parents who wanted to be on this committee.
I bet.
They were the most eager group, and so only 10 of them got to be on it. And so I tried to look at all of our schools represented, different levels, even people that haven't been on committees before. So it's not just the same names over and over again, trying to get people who represent our community in very diverse ways. So yes, there were 10 lucky few, and they're very excited about it.
Was there on the, this doesn't.
Oh, I have one more thing to add, but yes.
Was there, did you in the application process gauge a sense of where they stood on AI at all, so that And the question is really just making sure there's balance, that there's both sides.
It was a mixture. I chose a mixture of people that are really excited and work in the field and people who are a little hesitant about what it means in a K-8 district and what it means for education in general. So I did look at those applications and ask them questions. I will add, and I forgot to add, we will also have 3 virtual focus groups, one for students, one for families, and one for educators. So if you're not on the committee, we will still have an opportunity for people's voices to be heard, and we'll capture that information in those focus groups so that more voices are part of the overall design of our values, our guidelines, et cetera.
Is that the kind of thing that you would put out, like it's gonna be public?
It'll be public, but I don't have the dates yet, so this is my first public. We will have 3 focus groups.
That's awesome, thank you.
You had earlier mentioned in the last meeting, I believe, Stanford University being the, guiding, they're the guides.
So we're working with Stanford University's Graduate School of Education and partnering with Challenge Success, which is they know how to do engagement with students and listening to students. And so we're partnering. They're actually facilitating the committee so I can be a part of it. I'm not facilitating. I wanted to make sure that we had some outside voices and some outside facilitation. So yes, we are partnering with Stanford on this. Okay, I think we'll turn it over to Amanda.
Right. Good evening, board, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to share how the Ed Services Department has planned and helped support sites with the opening of schools. So I want to take a step back to talk about August 3rd and 4th. So that was our 2-day leadership retreat with our site leaders. On August 3rd, Dr. Koch shared all the same slides that you just saw, and she definitely made the plea and this then created that sense of urgency to look at our SBAC scores, to talk about which groups are performing well, which groups are not. And so we wanted to build upon that on August 4th when Ed Services led that day. So we took it a step further. One of the first slides we shared, actually the slide was called Data Matters, but what kind of data? To set the expectation and the foundation that this is going to be a data-driven year and that we're going to be looking at data in a number of different ways, because that really tells the students' stories, and it tells, again, who's performing, who's not, maybe why, but that we have to look at a variety of different data. So, of course, academically, we can look at SBAC. I'm excited that pretty soon we're going to have the California dashboard results, and that's also where we can break apart performance by what they call like the equity report. So we can see, in SBAC or in chronic absenteeism or suspension, which groups or demographics are in the different color brands and doing well or not doing well. We also talked about engagement. So in my prior role as Director of Student Services, I always said students can't learn if they're not in school or they don't feel a sense of belonging. That is just the foundation. We can do amazing things in curriculum instruction and have new math programs, but if they're not there or they're not interested in that, everything in curriculum instruction falls flat. So I encouraged the administrators that I had in my previous district that you can go back to last year's data. You can already look at which students were chronically absent. Oftentimes those patterns don't change. And so start the year with those phone calls or home visits to say, we're so happy that your child is here today, and try to change that, disrupt that pattern of which students are chronically absent. Also look at what is your suspension rates, who was forcibly removed from school last year, either because they're constantly sent to the principal's office or they were suspended. We can assume they don't have a strong sense of belonging. And then of course, looking more deeply into that panorama survey. Building upon, taking that macro to the micro and kind of where can we round out academic, where can we balance out the academic data and the sense of engagement. I shared a book that we read a couple of years ago. It's called Street Data. And I guess that could be looked at as kind of the soft data, but with the changing demographics in any district, engaging in those empathy interviews or listening sessions with our historically underrepresented students, for students that are not performing well, to find out what does your home life look like after school, or what cultural values or norms or barriers do you bring to school each day. Those kind of conversations matter, because if we're just focused on the academic, but we don't know what they're bringing into schools, again, that's a missing data point. So we wanted to set the foundation that those are going to be the 3 areas we talk about throughout the year. And we already have the dates for our data collaboration days. So we are partnering with schools and partners in innovation. We have the first ones coming up, many data collaboration days in September, where grade level teams are going to come together, the whole first grade team or the third grade team across the site. And we'll look at these different pieces and again, focus back on what are the students telling us with their performance. And that's where I feel the hope that change will come about. Okay, so shifting back to the beginning of the year assessments, there's quite a few beginning of the year assessments that have launched or are launching in the next couple of weeks. So relative to everything you're seeing on the screen, we provided timelines, we provided trainings on all of these assessments. And one thing I'm excited to share is that we're going to be using a new data platform called Data Zone this year. It's provided by Santa Clara County Office of Education, but it allows us to take all of this assessment data for a particular student and look at it holistically, that we don't have to go from platform to platform to see how did they do on Fountas and Pinnell or how did they do on iReady. We can put it all together for one student. So we had to spend quite a bit of time talking about how to roll that out because it's a big, any kind of platform change is a big change. So we have a new coordinator of educational services who has become the point person on Data Zone, and she is going to slowly train our principals. She's going to provide the data reports when we're done with all of these assessments to the principal so they can just focus on the results and the conversation with the staff. Teachers are learning how to put these results into Data Zone, and it's pretty simplistic, but that's going to be a year-long project to see how are we shifting to this platform to look at all of students' data together. Okay, shifting on to curriculum. As you know, our big push this year at the beginning of the year has been our professional development under our new California Mathematics program. So these are just some of the highlights of what's new in the program. So a couple of the highlights include that students are solving meaningful real-world problems, not just those traditional problems of having, a child go into the store and buy 50 pencils and it's real-life application. So one of the fourth grade teachers told me about a lesson she did last week where they were referencing a gaucho festival in Argentina. So there's some cultural connectedness, and there was some type of math problem related to that. Students build deep understanding before memorizing procedures. So in the next slide, you're going to see me talk about the framework of how math lessons are introduced, and it really shifts the pedagogy of how we traditionally did teaching to really putting the student at the center of the learning right from the start. Also, you're going to hear about how students are developing reasoning, mathematical thinking, and confidence by approaching problems in a number of different ways. So again, the way I learned math is there's one problem, there's one solution, and there's one way to get to it, but math is really evolving and changing where students are being honored for the variety of strategies and different ways of thinking. And so when I get more into the program, you'll hear how. And then finally, building upon the ideas of Joe Bowler, we're not teaching math concepts in isolation, but really trying to look at how are big math concepts interconnected, like consistently looking for patterns in numbers or using different operations flexibly. So if we shift to the next slide, I can give you some examples of that. So during our professional development, we learned a lot about this framework where students try, discuss, and then connect learning, which again shifts the way we traditionally taught. So when I was a teacher, it was always I do as the teacher, we do together, and you do independently. But this program is shifting everything where now we're going to put a problem in front of a student and watch them struggle a little bit. It's what we call productive struggle. Have them think about what do you already know about this problem? What's your prior knowledge? And have them think through how would you solve this independently? And that's where all of the math manipulatives come into play. They all got bags and bags of math manipulatives. So maybe you can't explain it, or you struggle with the verbal description of how you'd solve it, but you can build it. You can attempt to connect to the math problem before the teacher even steps inside. So, and we've seen this, we've been at schools every single day. And so it's so fun to see this in action. And then after students have some time in that productive struggle, the teacher encourages them to come together as a group. So if we were a group, Chris might share how he thought about the problem or what he knew about it, then Tasha. And so you start building the flexibility with numbers and that critical thinking to say as a team, how are we all coming into this learning together? And then finally the teacher steps in and says, it really is going to be an art for the teacher to say, if the three of us had a different background knowledge and a different understanding, how do I guide my lesson to respond to the student? So I think it's very exciting because it's very student-centered and it puts them in the center of the learning from the start, as opposed to me just teaching and, hoping that everybody's on the same page. Okay, next thing. So we've done a lot to help prepare for this shift in math. So on August 10th, we had district-wide professional development, and even within the math realm, there's 3 different trainings. So in level 1, that was for our teachers, it was brand new to them, and they just had to learn about the materials and the programs and the structure of it. But there was that emphasis on the students and their thinking and their language and their conceptual understanding. We had about 40 teachers that last year either piloted the math program or they took the level 1 training at the end of last year. So they were able to attend level 2, and they had a little bit more advanced training, including just the unit planning, the pacing, and the assessments. And then our administrators all met in here, and they had a day of learning to think about what does effective implementation look like, what should you be seeing when you walk into the classroom, and how do you coach based on the tenets of this program. I want to shout out all departments in the district office because it was no small task to get all of the curriculum materials distributed to all of the sites. And again, I give Dr. Codd credit for that she said, there's enough to do when you're opening schools. If we can get these all out at the sites, we can take a snapshot of enrollment, week before school starts and make sure everybody has the right amount of materials at the right places, then they'll be ready to go. So again, everybody from the district office jumped in to make sure that happened. And we had to find that right date based on Chris's numbers of, okay, we think this many kids are showing up here and here, and we're going to distribute it evenly. So lesson 0 is a lesson in the math program that's not actually in the teacher's manual because it's a recap of last year's standards. And so to be adopted as a math curriculum, you can't have last year's standards in a book. So it was digitally provided to teachers where they could practice the try, discuss, connect framework based on last year's standards and prior knowledge. But we, again, wanted to make sure that our teachers were ready to teach. And so, again, a massive effort to print out all the lesson 0s and produce all of the student worksheets so that kids could jump in. And so that's really when we were walking through classes this past week, that's what we've been seeing is let's take hopefully math concepts that kids know from last year and again, switch it on them to make them do the work at first to reconnect, talk about the flexible strategies, and then the teacher jumps in to confirm their understanding. So that's the lesson 0.
Lesson 0 is 5 days, by the way, not just 1 day.
Yeah. Yeah. We've also this year hired a 0.2 or 1 day a week district math TOSA. She was part of the pilot committee and she loves math and she's eager. This is her first, I think, district position. So we talked a lot about what her role would look like that 1 day a week. So she put an email out to all principals and had them sign up so that she can visit 2 sites every Wednesday. They all signed up right away and she can customize her support to what that particular school or site leader or teachers need at that site. So it's, again, we're providing professional development holistically, but we have this math TOSA that now can go into sites and talk with the principal and say, where do you need me? Is it the new teacher? Is it a teacher that is having a hard time with that shift? And then to also ask the teachers, where can I help you as a coach? So we're excited about her position. And then we actually have 2 more days coming up. It's been a lot with a lot of support with the math curriculum. On September 9th and September 23rd, we have our district collaboration day. So September 9th, they're going to go back and revisit the framework of try, connect, discuss, and say, you've been doing it for a couple of weeks. How is it going? Let's have a reflective moment to see how is this playing out in practice. And then on September 23rd, they're going to jump into identifying prerequisite skills for that year and looking at the data and scaffolded support for differentiated instruction. So more PD to come this month. Wondering if I should stop here just for a moment because that was a lot and see if I can take any questions.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you would have the same hard rules as Clover did.
right when she said the blue ones, I thought I should have put in more blue slides, but she said she would stop. That's okay.
I do have a couple of questions. One comment is, I appreciate all the focus on the data. I think that's good, but I also want to call out that I do appreciate that you said there's stories behind the data. Sometimes the data doesn't really always tell the story. Like, for example, despite the record stock market, we know that the economic pressures are real on families. Layoffs are rampant and so on and so forth. There's like, and that has an impact on parents. That has an impact on students. And do they show up to school? It's a whole bunch of things that the data doesn't really tell us. So I'm glad that you're not just stopping at the numbers, but you're kind of like digging into it. Then when it comes to the math curriculum, I mean, I want to help me understand a little bit, if you will, because there is the math is one school of thought, which is, hey, these are the foundations. It's like, a times table is a times table. Can't really change that much. But then there's also the thing of, hey, here's a different way to look at it. How are you balancing those to be able to say, foundationally, you need to be here,
Right.
but there's different paths to get there?
Yeah, I have an anecdote for that because I was talking with our math TOSA about, she's working directly with students that may have struggled in math in the past. And so she was giving the example of double-digit multiplication and how the different kids in her group were jumping into it. And there were strategies, but some kids didn't have the most effective strategies, just repeated addition. And it was a strategy, but again, it took a lot longer to get to the answer. So the way she explained it to me was that we're still going to honor everybody's way of getting to the answer. And I think that creates a less intimidating approach to math, to know that we may think differently or might get to the answer in different ways. But in the end, there are different strategies that might be more efficient, so we can learn from each other. So if Tasha had the more effective strategy, or then we're going to learn from each other. So I've heard and learned that it's the balance of meeting kids where they're at, allowing them to struggle a little bit, putting those strategies out, but then landing on what might be the most efficient strategy.
For that particular problem. The only math that I'd be really worried about is Chris math.
That's a joke.
So-
Strike it off the records.
So for me, I appreciate you acknowledging the chronic absenteeism. Everybody knows that's a big concern of mine, because you're very right. If they're not here or they're not engaged, there's kind of no point. And so I appreciate that focus. I know from being on school tours, a lot of the kiddos coming in with some trauma and some real big challenges. And so taking that very personal time is really important, really time consuming too. But I appreciate the focus on that, and being mindful of what our kiddos might be struggling with. I love the idea of the data zone. That just makes a ton of sense. And so I'm excited to hear about that. Dibbles is new.
Last year. And so I'm curious to see how that's all working. I know that we heard a need for time, right? Teachers needed time to kind of work with things. And so I'm hopeful that we're honoring that need as well. And I'm just curious, generally, it feels like maybe this is probably not correct, but I'm curious about how time consuming a different math approach might be in comparison to a more traditional way of teaching math. And I'm just thinking like that makes a ton of sense, those steps to try and discuss and connect and all of that. But I'm just curious, there are only so many minutes in a day. So this isn't something you can probably answer today, but I'll be curious to know how well that's working within the window of time that we have to work with kiddos. I imagine it may be something that's an investment at the front end, right? That it takes a little time for everybody to get accustomed to that process. But I'm sensitive to how many minutes are in a day.
26 hours.
Okay, thank you.
My question, actually, first of all, the professional development of the math, the direction you're heading is fantastic. I mean, you have to try something new that'll have some impact, big impact. How do you measure the success or the effectiveness of this methodology? Have you thought about it? And there is learning versus test scoring. So you just don't focus on the test scores alone, but how do you know that the kids have learned? Is there any measures that you have in place?
I mean, we just actually talked about that at our visit at Moreland Middle School today. I'm grounded in these professional learning communities where you really have to identify for every lesson, what are the essential standards? What are the outcomes we're hoping to see? How do you know if the kids learned it? What do you do if they didn't learn it? And what do you do for those that have already learned it before you taught it? You need to accelerate. I think every lesson, doesn't matter what subject area, has to be grounded in those 4 questions, but that requires teachers to be very intentional and very, aligned with what are the most important standards. And so they are, they're outlined in each lesson of what should the outcomes be. But I think where we really need to come together is to say, what are those frequent informal assessments to know out of this room who met that standard and who didn't, and what am I doing about it? So it's going to be that constant iteration.
One question, going one level above, how do you make the students passionate about math? Because math is everywhere. Is there any feel for it? I mean,
I think in just learning this program, the 2 things I'm excited about, again, is that kind of real life problem solving, the cultural connectedness. We used to practice these word problems that never really happened in real life. Of, I went and bought 40 watermelons, or, it's like stuff.
Night for a party.
Yeah.
A train leaves Chicago.
Yeah, so but again, that example of the Gaucho Festival, maybe that piqued somebody's interest, or maybe there was, some kind of connection where they feel like, okay, I'm seeing math in real world situations. I think that part is exciting. I think, again, having that hands-on experience, so every student has their own bag of manipulatives. So if you're more of a kinesthetic learner and you might not be able to explain how you're thinking or what your connection is, if you can build something, I think that can engage learners as well.
I'll just add anecdotally, just over the last 2 weeks, we've been talking to students, talking to teachers. Students actually like this math curriculum, and they're saying they like it better. They are more engaged, they like it better. I do feel like it's more of a balance between what you might see in traditional math program and what we saw in Eureka Math, which was not necessarily traditional. There aren't 36 strategies that you have to learn in the lesson. Maybe there's 4 good ones. So it feels more to me like a balance, but talk to the teachers, talk to the students. How are they feeling about it? I've heard really positive remarks over the last 2 weeks from parents, kids, and teachers.
That'll probably be a good question, or at least an idea when as fall site visits come up I don't know how easy it would be to coordinate for us to be in a room when a math class is happening.
Yeah.
I think that would be an exciting opportunity.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, questions. I think, and again, I don't know why I feel like I'm so old, but there's a moment of like our enthusiasm for new strategies and things like that. And then we test with a different methodology. And then we look at CAS data and go like, it's not moving. Like, but we're teaching these things over here. So how much in your mind, like, will this be correlated? Or do we put ourselves in a position at the end that goes, well, the test we're using actually doesn't care to give you some value to your novel strategy if the answer is in fact incorrect. How do you think that will, I mean, we're kind of projecting the future. Do you feel like this is really nicely correlated, or is there a chance we're having 2 different dialogues about?
I think it's that micro and that macro assessments, right? So again, if we can get into that cycle of really understanding the assessments that California Mathematics is offering, how frequently are they doing it, and what are we doing with those results, and we get into that cycle, then again, those would be those kind of micro assessments that we hope translates, again, hope at this point, to the standards that are being tested on something like an SBAC, something that is a large scale assessment.
Yeah, so I would be interested, as you kind of are working through assessments and we're starting to see it in action, early signs for either convergence or divergence. And it would be nice for us to be able to go like, ooh, I asked you this about all the assessments that we were doing last year, like, is this telling? And it kind of actually didn't, we were trending in those assessments to see positive results and change, but that didn't yield the same experience, I don't think. I don't know if you agree with that.
The projected proficiency, now macro district was spot on for where we ended on Smarter Balance, like exactly spot on. So projected proficiency with typical growth is exactly where we landed. Macro, so different schools, different size, different classrooms, but the iReady assessment is correlated to the Smarter Balance assessment. And this curriculum is aligned to the standards. It's a new curriculum. They had to go, through a very thorough vetting process. So from everything I'm seeing, what I see kids more engaged, talking about math, excited about math, learning fewer strategies, which I think is a good thing, and focusing on the answers. Like you still have to get to the answer. Yeah. So I really like this math curriculum. I don't know, you've got a couple, well, you're ELA, but Jeffrey's out there, he's a math teacher. So, I'm hearing nothing but positive things so far.
Question, or I have a question. Is there a correlation between ELA to math in terms of scores?
Can you expand
In the sense like you need to learn the language first before you do well in math. Is there any correlation there?
Problems.
Yeah, to solve problems, right?
Right. I mean,
Understand and solve problems.
yeah, because language is embedded in math, there is kind of universal understanding that we want proficient readers by the end of third grade. So when you start engaging into those word problems and those, higher order math, you have to have some basic foundational literacy and oral language skills, because I think across all math curriculum, students are expected to share their thinking now in math, which I know in my prior two districts, it's hard for some kids. They learn to memorize, but then when they were asked to talk about their thinking, things sometimes fell flat. But that's part of the 8 standards of mathematical practice, is that you have to be able to explain abstract concepts, and that's a different skill. So it is highly related to ELA.
Thanks.
I'm hopeful this helps reduce how many kiddos come to the conclusion really prematurely that they're not good at math.
Yeah.
And they're not, math people that sticks, right? They kind of make that decision very early on. I'm guilty of it. And so I'm really hopeful by engaging them very early in the process that addresses that unfortunate decision that gets made sometimes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think what I'm most excited about is that it's honoring where all kids are coming from. That again, right off the bat, it's not that he knows it and she doesn't, right? It's everybody's going to come with a different background. It's less intimidating to approach math to say, I might not be able to explain it, but I can draw it, or I can build something over here, and you're going to be honored for that. And then we'll get into, what are the strategies to solve the problem.
Ryan, did you have a question?
No, I just 100% agree that the strategies that are being implemented in terms of like what you said is basically decreasing the anxiety around structure, this educational portion of it. Like my daughter has a lot of stress and anxiety when she's faced with any type of math problem, as simple or what, and then that shuts down their opportunity to be able to succeed in a test. So if they feel like there are already no wrong answer to begin with, but that whatever they come to the table with is already going to be accepted, then their anxiety kind of decreases right off the bat, and that helps open it up. So I do like that approach, that student-centered approach to it, because then that decreases that overall anxiety that many of the kids have with numbers and math and such.
It's called the math wall.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of times that kids can build. Is this like a physical set of things that come in the curriculum?
Yeah, so part of the adopted curriculum, every student has a bag, probably about this big, that has all types of math manipulatives. So the base 10 blocks, the counters, a whole bunch of different ways. And so again, if you're more of that kind of creative engineering type of, thinker, and again, might be lacking some of those verbal skills, you can put things together. And they even tie in, we saw today at MMS, a lesson 0 where they showed base 10 blocks and then a word problem related, and asked the kids to think independently and then talk about how are these two graphics, how are these two pictures connected, and they could make the connection right away that the physical model matched what the word problem was. So they really are trying to make math more tangible.
Thank you.
Okay, should we move on? All right, so back to August 10th, because we do have teachers in our district that don't teach math. There was a number of different professional development sessions for teachers, counselors, psychologists that were not learning about math. So we had our preschool teachers all come together and they had a training on inclusive practices and legal requirements. Transitional kindergarten, they had a separate training on developmentally appropriate instruction for those 4-year-olds that are going to lead to success in learning, play, language when they do make that transition to kindergarten. Then for grades 6 through 8, English language arts, we focused on something you are going to hear about a little bit later in the presentation, which is how to accelerate language development through student discourse. That the student, whoever's doing the talking is going to be doing the learning. And so how do we promote that for ELA middle school classes? And then finally, for our 6th through 8th grade elective teachers, they had a session on conscious teaching, the engaged brain. So they looked at how to implement strategies to increase student engagement through specific lesson design. So it was exciting. I was able to get into every single professional development across the math and the different ones. And again, the level of excitement and engagement was high across all of our different groups. Okay, next slide. All right, so fast forwarding to the work ahead, we have a number of different committees, and Dr. Codd shared already about the AI task force, but to keep the work moving forward, we have a variety of different committees that are forming right now, and we're recruiting different participants. So the first one is taking a close look at our transitional kindergarten through 2nd grade early assessment. So we have kind of a homegrown math assessment here in Moreland, paper and pencil to look at just basic math foundations that we're going to look at again to make sure it's meaningful, it's research-based, and that it does lead to formative instruction in the classroom, along with our Fountas and Pinnell and level books and what level kids are at and how we're using it in instruction. Grading practices is a carryover committee from last year. So the goal is to implement a plan for site continuity across the middle school, so across Latimer, MMS, and EDS, standardizing assessments, retake policies when a student needs to retake a test, and then core curriculum alignment. So we're busily reading what were the notes and outcomes from last year and how do we carry that work forward this year. The TK curriculum, so there is a new state TK framework, which is just a framework. There is no dictate about a TK curriculum. We have had some questions about, are we going to get a curriculum? Are we not? How do we interpret the framework relative to play versus academic in the TK curriculum? So we'll explore that. And then compacted math. So as I mentioned, we have a new math curriculum, but we're still using another curriculum right now for that compacted math lane. So we want to take that time to look at, the California mathematics curriculum. Is that something we could shift to in this compacted math? While we're looking at this, take a look at again who and how are students qualifying for the compacted math lane. So we're going to participate in that committee this year. And then, of course, our cell phone internal committee. So the purpose of that is to evaluate our current policy, and I'll have an update on that in just a minute, the enforcement, and then to look at the behavioral tracking logs that, again, I'll talk about in just a few minutes. And just to have that firsthand experience, we have Michelle's going to be on our committee. So we have a good balance of administrators, certificated teachers, and classified, because, again, we know it's not just kids that are tempted to pull out a personal device in class. It could be happening during recess or in the cafeteria or wherever. So it'll be exciting to hear what's their firsthand experience. Again, I can look at the behavior tracking log and who has a first violation or second violation, but just boots on ground, like what are you seeing on your campuses? So that will be the purpose of that. Okay, so that takes us to our cell phone policy. So thank you for your anecdotal comments of what you're seeing. We've also anecdotally just been walking around and what do we see? And I want to give a shout out to our public information officer. We did a lot of work together to talk about the messaging up front, to have a direct message to families, to put information up on the website, to have FAQs. We spent quite a bit of time training administrators on this policy and how to turn it over to their staff when they had their first staff meeting. So I'm excited to share the latest data. I looked at the behavioral tracking sheets where we outline first violations, which is we see a personal device. It could be a cell phone, earbuds, it could be a smartwatch. And we take it, put it in the office, and then the child picks it up at the end of the day. No parent communication at that point. Same child does it a second time. Now we bring parents into it. We have a conference and we work with a family. And then third violation is a behavior contract is, do we need to ban this device, from school and so forth. So as of last night, I looked at the 7 data sheets. Out of our 3,600 students, 17 students have had a first violation and 2 students have had a second violation. So that is less than 1% of our population where, it's looking pretty good. And I, again, am grateful for all of the proactive communication that happened. And we're just not seeing it. We walked around a couple of our middle schools during the break periods and kids are laughing and engaging and talking. And you were with me, we were both there, we're trying to look clear.
You're looking at them, they're all huddled,
Or even today at MMS, we were there, Dr. Codd and I, during passing periods. And so I'm looking and I see something in the pocket. But I mean, I'm actually very impressed with the rollout of it and how they're pretty low data in terms of the violations at this point.
Great job.
Okay, I will pause because I have a blue slide. Any questions?
Go ahead. After you.
The internal policy, the cell phone policy, the committee that's going to be working on that, I assume is going to be assessing that and kind of coming to some conclusions, or I'm sure working with Dr. Codd, the team, on if there's a need for additional support in making sure that they're off and away. Is that a fair?
Yes, I think districts all across the Bay Area had different implementation strategies, including more restrictive measures of having pouches and lock boxes and different things like that. We are hoping with this first go that with effective communication, having an enforcement plan, having a consequence plan, that we would see how that goes. But that is why I'm looking forward to having the committee, because I can look at the numbers and the violations on the tracking sheets, but I do want to hear, how has this been for you? Are you just what's your experience with this? And so it is to answer the question of, are we on the right track just with our enforcement policy, or do we need to consider something more broad?
Have we heard anything positive, negative, et cetera, from teachers and parents on this? It's like, have the parents said, oh no, I need to be able to get in touch with my kid in terms?
I haven't personally, nothing has risen to my attention.
Okay.
My wondering or thought would be if a principal would have reached out, and I think and trust that they would have, but I haven't heard about any pushback. I think the other thing we did well is we talked about the exceptions. There'll always be exceptions for students with a 504 or an IEP that might use their phone as a medical monitoring tool, but we made that pretty clear that there's exceptions always. Okay, so moving on, getting close to the end. Cornerstone practice is, I know as a former principal, you walk in and you do your classroom observations, and there's a number of different things you can look for, but you're always wondering, where can I help guide my staff in what I'm looking for in order to improve student outcomes? And so we had Latimer share a story at our August 4th retreat, a success story where their cornerstone practice was student discourse. So over the last 2 years, they decided as an admin team that when they walked into the classroom, they wanted to see students talking 60% of the time. And that's very easy to track. There's different tables of how much teacher talk, how much student talk. And they really grew their school across that expectation. It's very similar to math, where it's built in and like you want to hear people talking about their ideas and their thinking and sharing. And so they came on August 4th and they shared their journey in this, and they talked about why talk is important in the classroom. And we read an article about it. Again, similar to math, there's very much a student versus teacher focus when the students are doing most of the talking. It's aligned to a lot of the tenets of the AVID program. Certainly supports English language development. We know that oral language is the foundation for mastery, and when students are kind of forced to share their ideas, it's going to build that critical thinking. So the outcomes for Latimer, I did write this down, over the last 2 years is that when they looked at their SBAC, ELA, math, and then science scores, over the last 2 years, there was somewhere between an 8 and 17% gain across all three of those areas. And so while we can never attribute it to one thing, they really felt strongly that improving student discourse, creating that safe environment to talk and share ideas really led to this gain. So we share this with the rest of our sites, and that's going to be our cornerstone practice at all the sites this year. And we're going to see whether we see those same gains at our other schools. Okay, principal PLCs. So as Dr. Cobb mentioned, we also feel that growing our site leaders is going to be a great way to see that student outcomes. And so, again, we can't hire school leaders and hope that they're, the strong instructional leaders. I know I certainly took a journey in becoming an instructional leader based on the professional development I received. And so that is what we are doing with our principal PLCs. So we actually have our first one this Thursday. So we're working with the Partners in School Innovation group, and we came up with the purpose and the outcomes for this upcoming session. And we talked about how we say our principals have to be instructional leaders, but do we all have the same understanding of what that looks like and what that means? And so we're going to develop a shared understanding of instructional leadership amongst our principals. We're going to create a shared understanding of effective teachers and effective teaching. And again, kind of go back to these tenets of like student discourse and productive struggle, some of these other ideas. We're going to talk about when we go into classrooms, what are we looking for? How are we monitoring instruction, and how are we giving feedback to teachers? And then we're creating slide decks for those site level data collaboration days. So because these are happening all across this district and many different grade levels, we're creating the training for the principals to lead these data collaboration days, which in turn is making them a more effective instructional leader when they have to run those data collaboration days. So we have our first one with the elementary group on Thursday, and then middle school is coming up shortly after that. So that concludes my presentation with Ed Services. For questions.
Just a comment, that's a lot. I mean, the whole, obviously, back to school report, there's a lot happening in the district-wide, in every department, in every corner and aspect of the district, but excited by the work being done, and super excited to see how this year goes.
I mean, it's a long report, but it's very important work, and it's important for our public to know and for you all to know and our educators of what we're working on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One of the things that I would like to see is there's a lot of initiatives, committees, programs. It'll be nice to tie it up to the 4 priorities that you talked about. Visually, you can see it, what is tied to what, right, on the 4 priorities that you showed earlier.
I think that's
so great. It'll be well organized, and everybody will get the message. And I want to thank Maureen for the cell phone policy on the website. It's, I could see it. I just forwarded it to some of my people in the community. So it was good. Thank you.
A question but a comment. Thank you. The first time through, appreciate, talking with both of you. It's important to launching schools. And we don't want to lose time for kids. It's really important that we, we're not finding our way as we get started, that we're off and running. And so thank you for contributing that.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything wrong? No. I just had one quick question. Is the principal PLC, is that new for this year, right? Or have we done?
It's a different take.
It's a different take.
It's smaller groups.
Okay.
And more targeted.
Okay.
More support, more accountability.
Okay.
Are the assistant principals included? Or?
Some of them are, some of them are not. We left that up for the principal to decide.
Got it. Thanks.
Because we're really honing in on principals.
All right, human resources. I only have 2 slides. Doing a lot of work, but I only have 2 slides. This is just overall kind of what we work on throughout the year. Something that was new, I can just highlight a few things. Last year was the Moreland Job Fair. That was successful, and we're going to continue that. So last year for the Moreland Job Fair, we had 93 applicants apply on EdJoin. We had about 75 people actually attend our job fair. It was really exciting. We developed questions, which was part of what we're also working with our interviews and updating our interview process. really giving rigorous questions that really will give the principals insight to where they're at in their knowledge and understanding. So I felt some of the people, candidates were like, those were really rigorous interview questions. And it wasn't just a casual screening. And I was like, no, we want to make sure we have a good screening for the principals and not waste anybody's time. So we actually hired 5 people on the offers on the spot at our Moreland Job Fair. We had 4 schools who invited teachers back for school tours, invited people back from interviews. So that was great because we scheduled it before the Santa Clara County Office of Education Job Fair. So we were grabbing candidates before they went to the county job fair. So that was very successful. We'll continue that. We did go to the county job fair as well. We interacted with over 120 people. The job fair was packed. And we offered on the spot to, I think, 2 teachers at the job fair, but we also had a lot of candidates that we could pull from and then interview with. So a lot of our hires early on before the end of last school year for this year were all from the Moreland Job Fair or from the Santa Clara Job Fair, where we had good pre-screenings and that we were inviting people back for, is it going to be a good fit for our school? And lots of principals saying like, oh, my first and second choice were great. Here, interview our second choice that we didn't offer. See if they're a good fit at your campus. So lots of sharing between admin about what they liked about candidates or who might be a good fit at what school or with what grade level. So we'll continue that. We are always promoting people from within. We always post our jobs internally for classified and for credentialed candidates to apply internally. Always offer those invitations to interview for upper positions or for different positions at different campuses or different jobs. I think a lot of people have promoted up this year or moved into different positions, even classified, moving maybe from an OA1 to an OA2, just and tapping people saying, why don't you try to interview for this? You might be this might be a good fit for you, and inviting people to do a little stretch. Some people interviewed and appreciated the stretch of the interview and interview feedback that were internal candidates. Like, you did really well, you came really close, this is what you can work on to develop, or you just weren't quite ready yet for this position, but please apply for other positions. So really working on giving our internal candidates the feedback about how they can grow and continue to promote within the district. Always want to celebrate our staff every year. So we will plan our celebrations in the spring, but we did the breakfast at the beginning. We'll plan our retirement celebration. We work with MTA and MCSEA to plan that. That's always a fun event. And we're continuing to update our application or interview process, which kind of what I spoke to. We're really, every time a new job pops up for interview, I'm going through and really looking at the old interview questions and updating them so they're pertinent to like the actual job and expectations that we have now. Any questions? And then for our next slide, these are what we've hired, 77 people total hires. For classified, that's since an actual 1 year cycle for classified. We do have a higher rate in the activity leader, I guess, turnover in that area, because activity leaders are usually like young college kids that, were doing it for a year and then they get transferred, or they going to a different college, or they actually find a career. So activity leader does have a high turnover in our classified, just kind of naturally. And then the certificated positions are from the kind of the end of the school year forward. We have a 94% retention rate of our staff across classified and certificated. When we look at that, we're looking at people who have left because they retired, they moved out of the school, they no longer want to be in the profession, they've transitioned to another profession, or they're staying home, or they've gone to a local school district, like a competitor. Our percentage of people who go to like a competing district is very low. Our largest percent last year were retirees. Mm-hmm. In this, you also have people that we involuntarily asked to leave the district because they weren't meeting expectations, which is also something as HR, we're going to really work with principals when they're training and giving feedback, and we don't see teachers coming along first or second year and really being able to implement that feedback, that it just might not be a right fit at this time for Moreland, and being able to release those people that aren't meeting kind of the expectations or aren't the right fit for Moreland or aren't what we need yet. So those are not in these numbers for retention because we've asked them not to return. Our retention rate is about 94% for all employees, so it's pretty high. Any questions?
I'll look to the board. Questions?
Just celebrate that retention rate. That's incredible. That's not an easy feat, I don't think. Especially, we've got districts around us that look and feel maybe completely differently and some that are very similar, but that's amazing. And that's I feel like we know that's what's special about Moreland is that people come and they stay and we're lucky to have such tremendous talent. Stay.
Exactly. Building that sense of belonging and that support and that feedback built in, the PD built in, all the things that makes people want to stay.
Tasha, I mean, do you have a sense of are we growing older, like in our teaching staff, or are we growing younger?
We do have a big group that was kind of like my higher and up when class reduction. So I'm not going to say older to that, but that have been here a while, like,
Formerly young.
30-ish years plus. When class size reduction, so when I was hired in 96, that was class size reduction.
You did that yourself.
I did that to myself. I know, I'm going to own it.
You did not do that.
You did that one.
Can't blame it on you.
Then class size reduction went to 24 to 1. So there was a real large hiring pool. But I do believe we have a lot of new hires. A lot of our people we hired are all new. So I think we're pretty scattered throughout. There are a big group of us that are probably getting ready to transition out, but when we're filling in and we look overall, we're pretty even. Yeah.
One question I have is majority of the teachers I know, and my kids attended Moreland, right?
Yeah.
Majority of them came from nearby neighborhoods and so on. With the current economic situation, things are being high. Has the commute for the teachers increased, and any sense of that? And does it impact their work?
Some, yes. We have teachers who commute from over the hill. We have teachers who commute from towards San Francisco area, kind of all over. We had a sub that was commuting from Concord. So large commutes for some of our staff, and sometimes that is a reason they leave. That's why when we look at our data, we do look at they left to like a district closer to home. Like if they lived far away, there's really not much you can do about that. You want to honor like their time with family, and who wants to be in commute for 2 hours? Nobody. So, but most people do live around that kind of hour commute-ish or less, or 5 minutes like me.
Thank you.
Do you track like exit interview data?
We do. We track why they left.
Yeah.
And that's how we know that a big chunk last year was retirement. There's a very small percentage, it's really small, of actually leaving to a neighboring school district. Then there's the little bigger would be they moved out of the area, or really relocated somewhere else, or found a job closer to home, but it's not really one of our competing schools. We also track, unfortunately, if a death, we did have of staff, we track kind of all that data, or they want to stay home to be a mom or change career. So we look at all of that, but again, the largest chunk last year was retirement.
I think one tactical question, I'm assuming that right now all classes are at 100%.
Correct.
No open. Excellent. The other thing that is like the 94% retention rate, to your point, is something that's absolutely worth celebrating. But I'm also kind of like trying to reconcile that with the feedback and coaching scores at 44%. It's like, are we, what does that tell us? It's like, does that tell us that, I don't know.
Sometimes I think principals were collecting data on like how you want feedback. So I might be a person that wants a quick note, and you might be a person who wants a public celebration. So trying to figure out how their staff likes to have feedback, because you might not like the way I give feedback, or how, make sure I'm trying to give you feedback the way you'll receive it, right? Like if you're a person that likes to be like, good job, appreciate you're here. Some other people might be like, don't tell me that. If I do something really phenomenal, just leave me a note. That's how I want to give my feedback, right? So honoring how people want feedback and kind of bringing them along those conversations. Like if you want that little note, make sure it's meaningful. And then do you want to have a meeting? So kind of, you know, managing that. We talked about that at our leadership retreat in August about kind of how to connect to people and what they need to feel connected. I also feel like that, Chris laughs at me and they make fun of me, but I say, you know, there's a limited window, unfortunately, that we have before we decide if a teacher is going to stay with Moreland or not. And sometimes we're all human. We like these people as humans. We see their strengths, right? And which is great, but sometimes they're not where we need them to be. So when we're on the fence, we need to release them because they're our number one resource for students. Like we have to look at what's best for students. At the end of the day, when I was a principal, I would say, gosh, this feels really crummy. Then I have to look at what's best for students and what I feel is the best fit for these students at this time. It does not mean that teacher cannot go off and be successful, have a great career, but at this time, in this moment, it might not be the right fit for Moreland. And so you also might have teachers who are getting feedback that they might not want to hear. And then this survey comes out right around the time when we're saying, you're not a great fit for Moreland. So I might not be liking the feedback I'm getting. That also could weigh into that survey as well, right?
We are changing the timeline though.
Yeah.
On the survey.
Yeah.
It's bad timing.
It's bad timing.
It's bad timing.
It really is with the way the cycle of release goes.
It's like March notices, is that what we're?
February.
Yeah, February, March, and then we get this in March.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
February, yeah. So
Yeah.
we're gonna move that up to January, just so it feels maybe a little more accurate
When we have those
in the moment.
Yeah. Oh, that
we have those conversations about not a great fit, it's February, and then we continue to work together until the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's an interesting profession when you think about that.
Is it still 18 months or is it 24 months? What's the probation time?
So you have your first year, you're on probation 1 or temporary, depending on how you were hired in. And the second year, you're probationary 2, but you have to be noticed by February. So really, if you're a first year and it's just really not a great fit and we're going to choose to release you, the principals kind of had a lot of feedback conversations and guiding conversations with you, and then you're notified in February. So it's a very short window.
Okay.
If it's a second year, then you had that prior first year up until like January, February.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Was there a question on the survey, teacher survey on recognition? I don't remember seeing it, but.
I don't remember all the questions on the survey, but there is something in that construct. I'd have to go back to the question.
I recognize for my positive contribution to my school, 88%.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, mine's only about an hour long, so I'll be quick. All right, we're gonna look at, just take a snapshot of our enrollment. So we had our projected enrollment at 3,683. We had that kind of all of last year, had really no reason that it'd be any lower. That was a 1.5% decline from last year. Even in June, when we were looking at the numbers, we were actually above that. We were closer to 3,700. Unfortunately, first day of school, you can see there was a big drop. We dropped about 71 from what we projected. So we're sitting currently, when this was done, at 3,612. We actually gained 5 more students, so we're at 3,617. So we're going to continue to watch the numbers. Every week I give you guys an enrollment update. We're funded on a 3-year average, so even though this is a steep decline, it's not going to impact us immediately. We did have some money, if you remember, set aside for enrollment mitigation, so we bring that money back over to help. This isn't a new, I said up, so now I'm going to think. This isn't this isn't new. If you look back, enrollment in 2019, 2020, we were at 4,683. And fast forward to today, so that's about 1,000 student drop. So
that's
if we look at a graph, There you go. You can see the steep. And even in the 1920, we were already kind of declining. But this is, I didn't want to go too far back, so it's about 70.
Chris, I think the problem is me. It's 1,500 students since I started.
Totally.
It's really, we figured it out.
1,500 since you started?
I think so.
So you're the problem?
I just think we could make this a lot easier.
And this isn't a Moreland particular problem. Santa Clara County, it's the state of California. We just saw, I think COVID accelerated this decline. So.
Just, do we know, I know it's tough to get because it's probably not publicly available, but do we know if private schools are seeing an increase in enrollment?
So Maureen's going to talk about in her communication a little bit of where we think students are going, or kind of do a little research into that.
Okay.
If you draw the enrollment drop and the increase in budget, it'll be very strong.
Yeah. Good point. All right, so let's go to some better news. Measure M projects, kind of in progress. If you approve our contract that we have forward, we'll start the Anderson and Baker fields pretty soon. Anderson will start, I think, when we approve it, after Labor Day, and Baker will start in October after the catwalk. MMS field and EDS field are also in the works, the DSA process, so waiting for that to go through, and we'll send it out to bid once we can. Those are some snapshots with the designs. District-wide project, yeah, good.
I like you put the goal 4 at the bottom there.
No.
So relates to everything that you.
That was a clever thing.
I love that.
I'm not going to take credit for it. District-wide projects over the summer, it was a pretty light.
That was absolutely.
It was a pretty light summer for us. Not a lot of big projects, which was good. We have, cleaned our campuses, get ready for the start of school, made sure our HVACs were working. Most of them work. Some exceptions, working them out. We were able to replace the EDS freezer. That's our main one through child nutrition funds, as well as our MMS walk-in freezer. With the walk-in one at MMS, we had a leak on top, had some damage, so we had to replace it. We took the opportunity to relocate it. So if you ever get a chance to go over there, you'll see it's a much bigger, we took it, you face the kitchen, there was an office. We were able to put the fridge over there, bigger footprint, able to store more, a lot nicer. I did get a complaint about the EDS freezer, unfortunately. I was over there, and she says it's really cold. I said, well, that's great. That shows you how inefficient our other one was. If you're not cold when you go in a walk-in freezer, we have no problem. So that should help with efficiency. Then we had some floor replacements across the district, mostly in our TK preschool rooms. Our biggest projects were technology. We deployed over 3,100 Chromebooks and 50 carts to all 7 schools. We updated 1,000 plus iPads, updated our phones throughout. Yes, we still need phones. Part of the reason we had to do that is our contract was up with Cisco, and they were really jacking up the price, so we needed to be more efficient with that value. We were able to remove and process end-of-life devices, picked up any kind of outstanding surplus we had at the school sites to kind of really clean up that space. So you can see just the different. It was a big project to get done in a short amount of time. So we got it done. We're ready for school. I don't think there was too many issues, but we're working it out. Cool.
Great job by Vince and his team.
Yep, great.
Thanks, Chris.
I kept it short. Pretty good.
Thank you, appreciate that.
The decline, sorry, before we move on, the decline in enrollment, where was I going with that? It just escaped me. Are those kiddos that have enrolled and not shown up, or that we anticipated would enroll and did not?
Combination. So there's some over the summer, usually in kind of some TKers enrolled, and then they decided to keep them out. Some of them, as we know, we said we're gonna keep them in our preschool. Some moved over the summer, and they just didn't notify us until the first day we called them. We're like, oh yeah, we moved. So Marie's looking into that to see what is that pattern, to see if we can anticipate it.
Well, good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to come up here once a year to share with you all the things we're doing strategically with communications. And I'll get to some of that. I talk about that just a moment in our last slide. So if you could advance, please. Going to start with some of the wins that we had this year, some of our highlights, and then we'll move to our priorities this school year. So first, you can see up there, we're excited to bring back our annual report. We have 18,000 of these go out across the district, and we are excited not only to bring it back, but also to, on the back, we had the QR code. We translated the entire thing into Spanish, and where they could scan and go online and find that in Spanish. We really are working to meet our families where they're at and find ways that we can grow through that, through a lot of the platforms we have that automatically translates, but that was something we wanted to do. And we also, it was actually some of the feedback based on our Opening Schools report last year, where we wanted to do our real estate outreach to realtors, to bring this to realtors' offices, because we know it's important. A really big capture point is when people move to the area. TK is a huge, important time when people are buying homes. So that was part of our outreach this year. We've talked about, we do a lot of surveys here in Moreland, which really helps us. We're really leaning into the data that we have to make smart strategies as we can. And our perception survey is an important one. Not only do students and staff, but our families. And we were happy to see that the response rate grow by 25%, from 721 responses to 903. We really work with our principals. The tech team does a great job of providing response rates as we're going. Here's where you're at. And the principals work really hard to say we want to get higher, and so we're happy with that. And also just, a lot of our work in communications is relationship building and public relations. And so I really made an effort to really reach out to, whether it's MEF, we were really happy how we partnered with them for the 5K and the results they saw, the attendance there. We're working with our public elected officials, whether it's County Supervisor Susan Ellenberg, who gave us, the Santa Clara County supervisors gave us a proclamation for Literacy Day. So things like that matter, and we like to promote them. And we also work with our public safety. And crisis communications is part of what we do behind the scenes. It's really important to have those relationships. So when we need to reach out, we have great relationships, and we appreciate them picking up the call. Next slide, please. So first, just some of the highlights. There's so much we do, but I kind of wanted to highlight a few things. The attendance campaign is something I was excited to work with our Director of Student Services, and now we're so grateful to have Amanda joining our team. We did a first ever parent survey to ask about attendance, about what is the most common reason kiddos are not here, and by far the #1 reason was illness, and #2 was travel. So we use that, but the other part of the data that we're excited to use is what gets your kids to school, what's most exciting. And that is exciting when we saw that data line up with, we're going to be doing we already filmed it, we just have to roll it out, a student testimonial campaign. Why I come to school, what I'm excited about. Kids talking about how much they like seeing their friends. And it's just a new kind of tactic and strategy to use as we work on our attendance. The other thing was our enrollment campaign. We're always looking at how can we capture more kiddos coming here. We know we're looking at declining enrollment, but we also want to see what can we do? Who can we capture? Is there anything we need to look further at? This year we leaned more to TK. As we've switched from kinder, it's not TK as the beginning, right? That's the opening. So we revamped our TK webpage. So we got 3,000 views there. And our bounce rate improved on the website. That just means when you come to the website, are you just going to that one thing and leaving? Or are you staying and clicking through? So it helps people stay a little bit more. We really want to keep our content current, and it really is a huge driver. As much as it's an internal tool, it really is important how people first interact with the district. We've done some of the research. We've surveyed families, how did you hear about us? And actually the school websites are really important. That's often the first impression. So, and then social media growth, Instagram, our followers, we went up 11%, Facebook went up 2% year over year. Instagram continues to be our biggest driver. And you can see just the growth of that's where where we see a lot of growth and where our community is. We also saw, speaking of like website, just a little note, the beginning of the school year is a huge drive, no surprise, for the website. Like it's our number one, it's the first day of school. Where social media, it's June. And if you look at those promotion ceremonies and the senior walks, just the numbers just spike. So we continually then know that both the website and social media are both important strategies. Back to just also in our enrollment campaign with the website, we know that transitional kindergarten and TK near me are just key search terms. So when we do Google search ads, like that's how a lot of people are finding us. So we have done Facebook, Instagram ads, Google search, and we actually did some Nextdoor this year as well, just to include, and we partnered a little bit with HR for LinkedIn for a little bit as we tried some new strategies there too. We didn't actually have to do, because HR, the hirings, it was so amazing, we didn't have to do a campaign for HR, but traditionally those ads do so great. So it's always nice to see when we're advertising how much people are excited about Moreland. And just last thing on the media coverage, we had 7 media placements across 6 outlets, including Anderson Elementary did a great job of hosting the San Jose Barracuda hockey team. It was a really sweet event, and the principal there did a great job coordinating, and we worked, and we had KTVU, ABC7, and KCBS Radio. They interviewed one of our teachers, and it was also the message that he put out there was some of our strategic messaging about our strategic plan and educating the whole child. So it was a win-win all around.
Awesome.
Any questions off of that? Okay, and this is my last slide, so I don't have a blue.
How much do we spend on digital advertising?
So we budgeted a total of $7,000.
Okay.
It's just a matter of how much, I believe we did a $7,000, and then we just did a $2,000 campaign, a very mini campaign right before the start of school to try something where we actually tried ads in both English and Spanish.
Okay.
I just got the report today, and our Spanish ads did pretty well, but we still have to get on that. But about $7,000 is
okay. And you think that's sufficient from Instagram, especially considering, like TK near me is such a powerful term because it shows intent, right?
And is Moreland School District good? Or Moreland School District reviews?
Yeah.
So I think some of the feedback we've looked at doing is not just enrollment, but an overall brand campaign for Moreland to know about Moreland. So that's been one suggestion. Another thing is actually AI in online reviews. So this has been really interesting learning, and I'm excited to serve on the AI task force. How AI is fed if you search what is Moreland, and it actually pulls from Yelp reviews, which a lot of people say, why does a Yelp review matter? I'm not going to go there for, some will say that for education, if it feeds into the algorithm and it says, yes, Moreland is great, but we had this one negative review 10 years ago. So it's really, we take it important to actually this year I've been working on our online presence, our reputation, responding to ads, saying we care, if this happened to you, please reach out to us. We want to know. So it's really being proactive with that online presence. And it just grows and grows. There's great schools, but it goes, there's Yelp, there's Google reviews, there's many sites. And so we really are trying to keep a pulse.
Thank you.
Moving ahead for this year, our strategic priorities. So enrollment, we already talked about. So one of the things, Chris, kind of to get to that question, we are going to launch a survey to ask these families who left. Why did you leave? We've already pulled some of the numbers from May, and it's really interesting to see. I'm excited about the data team of what we're working on. We're even going to kind of formalize, I want to formalize more of the process. Right now, schools will put in why are people leaving, moving out of the area, going to private school. Some of the initial data, I can already see the top 4 private schools that people are going to when they're leaving here. So, which I think could only help us as we're targeting. I think one of the big questions I want to look into is if 94% of our families say they would recommend Moreland, like once you're in, you're happy here. So how can we get the people in, and who can we capture, and how can we get that word out? So I think that's what we're going to be really excited to look into that and to partner to get some answers.
Do we have demographic data to be able to say, in our school district, we have, I'm just going to say 10,000 kids who are in the TK through 8, and we have 3,600 of them here.
See, the demographic study that Brian was talking about, where it does capture that in that type of study, so that we have data from 5 or 6 years ago. So once we do that study again, it will
very
talk about,
interesting to see
it's the
that.
capture rate.
Yeah.
It's the capture rate.
That would be very interesting to see.
Which I think only helps us inform better, right?
100%, yeah, for sure, for sure.
And also just on the enrollment note of the parent testimonial campaign, we know how important word of mouth is. You know, if you tell me you had a good experience here. So we have done the parent testimonial campaign that'll also be launched out with 3 parents sharing the good things that they like. And we try to match that up with, when we look at the data, what are people looking for? Or where are they going and why, right? If they're leaving the area, that's one thing. But if they're going to private school, that's something we want to look into. The Measure and Bond campaign. So this has been some exciting work on the fields. It's coming. So get ready for lots of invites to groundbreaking ceremonies coming up, including 2 next month. We are doing, the website is a work in progress, but I'm excited to have that for our entire community, both staff, both our broader community. We're developing a website for each school site. So if you're in Anderson, if you go today, you can click on Anderson and see a little drawing of what's going to be happening in Anderson, same at Baker. So we're really leaning in with this the first 4 projects, Anderson being landscaping, the other 3 being fields. And really working with our MOT department to notify our principals, making sure they're in the loop, that they have the latest so that their communities know, so we can walk everyone through this, and letting our broader communities know we're going to be sending out flyers and postcards to say, you know, your tax dollars at work and pardon our dust as we work to improve this project that taxpayers so generously funded. And as for the the district website modernization, we have launched a website task force that'll be meeting. We want to have representation from every site. Basically, we use Edleo right now, and just we want to look at other providers to make sure it's keeping up with technology, ADA compliance, you know, American Disabilities Act, and so we're going to be looking into that to look at looking to get a new website, have that roll out next summer. So that'll be a process that we're going to take this year. And then last thing, thank you. You were already part of our 175th, you know, the kickoff for the 175 years of Moreland, the first rural school district in California. So much pride. The bell that's right out there, that was a hit with staff. So we had the photo op. We shared those photos with all staff, and we're happy to see those highlighted on social media. And we continue to have that be a theme throughout the year. Proud of the history of Moreland and what we continue to do. And with that, I have one last slide to wrap up. And this is more internal because so much is external. Really, we do so much internally to really feed our community. This is something that actually came out of our feedback from the staff perception survey. People want to know who at the district office or who does what. And this is a lot of our leadership teams. So this is an org chart we've developed. We haven't rolled it out to staff just yet, so stay tuned, it's coming. And this is just to see, we've actually already heard some initial feedback from some of our new team members saying how nice it is to see people's faces and to know who's who. Because as much as we're grateful that Moreland has had people here forever, for when you're a newcomer, it's really nice to feel part of the team and know who's who. So that's my report.
And that was amazing to all of the team. I just want to say thank you. I know it was very long. I can see the eyeballs. I can feel it from over here. However, it's really good, important work, and to be able to communicate what we're doing for people to know. I think we had more people watching tonight than we've actually ever had online in recent years. So people are paying attention. And so thank you for your patience and for the long evening, and just to the team.
No, this is
fantastic.
Yeah, no, there's nothing here that should have been left out.
Yes.
I mean, this really was comprehensive and probably isn't even everything that's happening in our district. There's no way you could capture that all. I want to thank you too for the proactive effort that's being made. I know that's a district commitment to support enrollment and make sure that we're getting the word out and that our community feels supported and heard and has all the information they could possibly want. And so that's a lot to do. And so thank you. Thank everybody for all of your hard work.
There is a blue slide. No questions.
Thank you. Went right past it real quick.
All right. Thank you again. I'm sure it was a lot of effort to put put this comprehensive report together and really appreciate the effort that went into it. All right, moving on to 6A, discussion and action items. I think, Chris, you're up for that?
Yeah, so we're asking the board to approve award the contract to KYA Services to construct the landscape improvements at Anderson and Baker. We use the CMAS, or California Multiple Awards Schedule, which is a procurement program administered by the California Department of General Services. And basically what it allows us to do is, instead of having our own separate procurement, we're able to kind of latch onto this one that they've already gone through and kind of really found the best deals. And so we're able to kind of tack onto that. So what we did was we took our designs, we actually combined the two to really maximize the value of it. We get one contractor for both sites, so it saves us money. We found 3 that kind of specialize in these, to kind of give our designs. So when you do, KYA came out as what we feel is best for the district. So we ask you to approve that contract so we can start those projects.
Any questions from the board? No questions.
Excited to see it actually come to fruition.
What was that?
Excited to see it actually come to fruition.
A long time coming.
Long time coming.
I know this field, the plans to have the kiddos move off, if there's any need during the school day for those fields, is there a?
Yeah, so we've been working with the principals. Anderson won't be as big of an impact. It's kind of off to the side. We're making sure it's fenced off. Baker's going to be a little bigger project, so it's really going to be, work with the principals. They're going to really have to keep them off. They're going to be on the asphalt. Baker, I think there's plenty of space to do it. I think it's going to be worth it in the long run. Anytime you do a field, you have to shut it down.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some downtime.
Okay.
But yeah, principals already know, over communicating with them, like, this is when we're going to start. She knows right after Catwalk, and Catwalk's the 10th. We do a ribbon cutting the Monday after, or Tuesday, and construction. So.
With gold shovels and hard hats.
Excellent.
It's for full academic year, right? The Baker work will be going on for a full academic year? Is that?
Yeah, so it's probably about 6 to 8 months.
6 to 8.
Give or take. I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on the weather.
Yeah.
If we have a wet winter, that's going to slow things down.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just part of construction when you're doing a field.
One of the things we looked at, one of the iterations that we had looked at over the years about refurbishing fields came down to, other outside uses, so soccer teams and things of that nature. And so in the case of Baker, that would be a brand new facility. That will be beautiful. I know that in my own neighborhood, the back of Prospect is used 24 hours a day with soccer teams rolling through. Have we started to think about forming like revenue generating partnerships that would be able to run through?
Yeah, once we kind of get started with the projects, so we can get them up and running, then I will work with our MOT department, because they kind of run Facilitron and everything, and look at those different partnerships we can do. I think there's going to be the demand, because there's going to be, especially with artificial turf, it's all weather. Maintenance is easier. You're not going to get the bumps and the gophers and the ground squirrels. So I think there will be a demand, and so we'll be able to generate some revenue from that.
What we learned from the Latimer field is it's too small for most leagues to be able to utilize. I assume these will all be.
We tried to maximize them. So Baker, I think, is like you're a 77 or 88, whatever the ranges is, because it's the biggest size we can put on there.
Yeah.
Once we get to paint, that's going to be a full size because it's got enough space. So we really tried to maximize the fields. Because we kind of had that in mind of it can generate.
And Moreland Middle will have a full size and another one.
They're going to have 2, yeah. So the Moreland Middle is going to have 2 full size. So it'll have an artificial, and then there'll be a grass one as well when you look at them. And they're both full size.
Does any of the schools in the district have tennis courts?
No, not in the middle.
No. Okay.
Just go use Prospect.
So sneaky.
And it's all about pickleball now anyways.
Pickleball.
So with the approach of using the same vendor for both, did the proposal come in at around what we were expecting, or was it lower?
Lower. So when we first did it, it was coming in a little higher than our estimate. So we wanted to see what can we do to maximize our dollar. And so by combining the two projects, we're a small district, so the transportation between the two schools is minimal. It allows for, the construction team to mobilize once the project's going on, so it does really maximize what we can do.
Perfect, okay, all right. Any other questions for somebody? When we said we had no questions, we had quite a few.
I move to award the contract utilizing CMAS to the KYA Services LLC to construct landscape improvements, Anderson, et cetera, Baker, as presented. I got,
Towards the end, it's like et cetera.
Anderson and Baker. Thank you.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, 6A, so moved. Moving to the consent items. Any questions from the board members on consent items? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
Make a motion to approve the consent items in aggregate.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And future meeting dates?
I do have a problem on the 8th. I am in New York, and I hope that I'd be able to attend virtually, but I'm hosting a dinner, so I will not be in attendance for the 8th.
Okay.
Tried.
As mentioned earlier, November 10th, I might not be able to attend. I thought I'd be able to attend remote, but there's a chance that I won't be able to attend at all. Any other?
I might put a placeholder for the second half of October meeting for now, but I can confirm it later.
Okay.
So that's be probably 27th of October.
Okay.
I might attend remotely from international location.
Okay. All right. Announcement, reminders, requests. I just had one. Please take a look at the upcoming fall site visits and sign up.
I have them in there for
Yes.
everybody.
Because we're meeting again for close.
Yeah.
All right, nothing else. We are adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody, for listening.